All right. Well, thank you for coming to my webinar tonight about utility billing and RUBS and really how to get started doing this for your properties, and how I've actually used utilities as a value-added strategy, not only for my personal properties, but as we continue to grow our portfolio, it's really become our secret sauce in growing our portfolio with no additional money out of pocket. So I know we have a couple people here tonight. Kyoto, you said that your properties, or you're in the middle of transitioning your properties from Massachusetts to South Florida, correct?
No, that's one is in Rhode Island and one is in Connecticut.
Okay, Rhode Island and Connecticut. Okay.
Yes.
And then, go ahead.
Basically, I'm trying to either try to get fair market value for rent, or to try to get rid of it and then sell it and try to reinvest in Florida. My goal is to try to invest in apartment buildings. So I want to know where to start, how to get going so that I can start investing that way, instead of trying to do just our 2-family homes or single family homes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it definitely helps you scale a little bit faster when you have some apartments. So, but we'll look a little bit later on in the presentation. I have some ways that you can analyze deals, and using RUBS as a way to analyze those deals to see if they're going to cash flow better for you as well. And Khalil, where are you located?
I'm in St. Petersburg.
Oh, nice. And then do you have apartments in St. Petersburg as well?
No, so we're actually going through the program right now to learn to acquire our first
Oh, great.
couple
That's great.
doors. We've been learning from this incredible crew.
Yeah, they are amazing. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about RUBS. And whenever you're looking at buying a new property, we specifically target properties that aren't doing RUBS, and then push the value up with RUBS. And you've heard of like the BRRRR strategy of buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. We're doing that same thing, except for spending the money on renovations. We're changing that out with reduce expenses with RUBS. So buy, reduce expenses, rent, refinance, and repeat. And so it's a strategy that we like to use. And so when you're looking at new properties, it's something to definitely keep in mind.
Yeah, we kind of learned a little bit.
Awesome.
Sorry, we learned a little bit from when you did it with Greg's underwriting class, so that was very beneficial.
Oh, great. Yeah, definitely. It's super helpful just to kind of know the formula and know what's possible. I see a couple other people on the call. Is it Terrence?
Yes.
Okay. And then I see Ronald as well. Are you guys all located in Florida?
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, Terrence.
Oh, good. Perfect. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So get to my next button here. Like I said, I'm Tiffany Mitchell. My husband and I, we're apartment owners. We recently transitioned from Florida, or from California to Florida. We've been slowly transitioning our units over. We bought 5 properties in the last 12 months. And we've really kind of used Utility Ranger as our secret sauce for buying apartments. I'll go into that in just a few minutes. Really why we started Utility Ranger is because we were having trouble in our own apartments. Our tenants were super wasteful. And, I would say the biggest issue was when we were sitting around our kitchen table one day and looking at our bills and realizing that our utility costs were eating into our profits. And we knew that there was a problem, but we didn't really know how to solve the problem. My husband comes from a family of multifamily investors, and so they had mentioned to him, you should do this program called RUBS. We had never really even heard of it before. And when we started digging into it, we realized that there was a way to, recover some of this costs that our tenants were using. So when you think about how your tenants use water, most of us don't think that our tenants are being super wasteful, but just think about kind of your own behaviors and your own water use. How do you use water at home versus when you're away? And I like to use the example of imagine yourself when you go to a hotel room and your shirts are a little wrinkly. What do we all do? We kind of put our clothes in the shower, turn on the hot water, shut the door, and let it go and let the clothes get steamed. So you don't have to pull out the iron and iron them. And we do that not thinking it's going to be wasting water, but we do it because the cost of the water comes with the cost of the hotel room. So we use it as we need because we feel like we're already paying for it. But if you're not billing your tenants for utilities, specifically water, your tenants act the exact same way. So when your tenants aren't paying for their water, they're not really thinking about their water use, and they could be doing a lot of kind of careless, water wasting, activities. I always go back to this story that happened right around the time when we were looking at doing RUBS. Is we had one of our tenants call us to tell us that the neighbor was leaving her water on all day long. We sent our on-site manager into her unit and realized not only was she leaving her water on, but she literally had her shower on all day while she was at work. And she said that she was doing it because her dog had anxiety and she didn't want her dog to bark and upset the neighbors. And so if her dog thought she was home and taking a shower, her dog would remain calm. I don't know, for whatever reason back then, they didn't have like a white noise machine or something that she had to actually use the water, but that was kind of the last straw that we knew we had to really do something to help not only the cost of our water, but help our tenants be more responsible. The problem is harder for smaller investors versus institutional investors. And the reason I say that is because smaller investors don't have the same access to the technology the big players have had for years. Utilities are the third largest expense on our books. Water costs have risen over 75%. And you can't typically raise rent enough to cover the cost of the increasing water. And really, the big owners have these service companies called utility billing service providers that will do this for them. They'll take their bill, divide it up, send bills to their tenants on their behalf. But they don't typically service people if you have under 1,000 units in your portfolio or if you have under 50 units on a single property. And I know this firsthand because I've worked for these companies. When we when we went to all these companies and said, hey, will you help us do the utility billing? And they all basically looked at us and said, I'm sorry, you're too small. Your properties are too small. We can't service you. And I don't really take no for an answer very easily. So I decided to kind of backdoor the system, go work for these utility billing companies and learn firsthand exactly what they were doing so I could bring it back and do it on my properties. So I got a job at these companies. I became a customer by default, and I became an expert in utility billing and really discovered the secret behind utility billing. And that's really the origins of Utility Ranger, was wanting to help other apartment investors like me, us little guys, get as big as we can and grow as fast as the big guys have been growing for years. And so I wanted to kind of take this service model and turn it into a software model so we can put it into the hands of owners just like me and you guys, so we can have the same advantage, use this as a mechanism to grow our portfolios and grow our income at the property as well. And the secret behind utility billing is not so much just the utilities. The secret really is forced appreciation. And I saw this firsthand on my properties. We first implemented this on a 36-unit property in San Diego. And that 36-unit property, the following year, we had about $36,000 of additional utility RUBS reimbursement income. But it wasn't until we went to go get that property refinanced with Fannie Mae that property got valued at $1 million more just for that additional $36,000 of net operating income increase that came from that utility reimbursement check. That $1 million increase from the property appreciation, we were able to do a cash out refi, pull 500,000 out, and use that money to buy another property. So we literally like bought another property and didn't put any money out to do the program, got money back, we're able to use that as a mechanism to continue to grow our portfolio. And that's exactly what we're doing every day since. And so I have a little RUBS to Riches framework on here that this is kind of a quick, easy way of looking at this that will give you just some more insight on how to use to scale your own portfolio. So first you want to think when you're either looking at a new property or looking at an existing property, ask yourself, what do the tenants pay for? A good way of looking at that is what expense is an occupant dependent expense. So what types of utilities like water, sewer, trash, pest control, cable, Wi-Fi, amenities, electric car charging, insurance, and how to implement those. You know, all of these things can be billed back. It's somewhat of a concept I like to call unbundling your rent. You know, you look at all these other industries when there's been some price commoditization and overregulation in the markets. You always have to figure out how can we continue to make money when there's these outside forces that are kind of preventing you from making money. And look at the airline industry. They had to unbundle their baggage from the airline tickets. Now you see resorts who are unbundling, especially during COVID, unbundling their services with resort fees. Now you don't necessarily even get the cleaning every single time in your room unless you want to pay for the additional cleaning. So that's really how they're looking at, you know, selling it, but then there's all these extras on top. And I really do think the future of multifamily is kind of triple netting apartments where you're renting the airspace and everything else is extra, because the rent might be so regulated on how much I can raise your rent, what I can charge you. And if you unbundle these other items, these are variable expenses on your book. So if you can build them back on top, you know, the main driver for people coming to your apartments is typically the price now, where it used to be much more amenity driven. You know, what amenities do you have? Now it's what's the price? And if I'm including all these things in my rent and I'm marketing my price at, let's say, $2,000 a month, and I have everything included in my rent, versus my competing neighbor, they may be marketing their unit for $2,000 a month. So I feel like I'm at market rate, but they have this, you know, entire unbundled charges. Their net effect might even be $2,200 a month, where because I'm bundled into my rent, my net effect is probably closer to $1,800. So now you're $400 a difference per unit per month, you know, far away from your neighbor. It's really hard to compete in that market. The second on this is save. So tenants use less of what they pay for. The average tenant saves about 20% from their overall consumption. Typically, you don't just have the savings from just using less water, but you will typically have an increase in maintenance requests, because you think of all of the, you know, running toilets and leaky faucets that tenants don't want you to come into their apartment. They're either hiding a cat or hiding, you know, extra tenants, or they just don't want you in their unit. And so they won't even tell you when you have, you know, leaky toilets, like a flapper on a toilet, the $5 part, but you can lose hundreds of dollars a month in lost water for not reporting it. Appliances. So clothing washers and dishwashers, people aren't, you know, running those every time you have one or two dishes in the dishwasher once you implement a program like this, because people are actually thinking about how they're using it, because they know whatever their, you know, behavior is going to have a direct impact on how much their bill is going to be. And so why this matters is because you need your residents to be more accountable. You need them to let them know when there's leaks or running toilets, anything that's happening on site. And so you typically will get, you know, a flurry of maintenance requests once you initiate the program. And then the next phase on this is surge. So the forced depreciation, I mentioned to you guys before how we saw $1 million increase on our 36 unit property. This is really what I like to call NOI hacking. Every dollar that you can bill back to your tenants provides a $20 increase to your property value. So it's a real net effect on every dollar that you can bill back out to your tenants. And why this matters is because commercial properties are valued with your net operating income divided by your cap rate. So that's why every dollar on your NOI really counts to get your value of your property to increase. And then the scale and surge, or from surge, you go to scale. So the refinance and repeat. So like I mentioned before, the access to your capital to scale, increasing your property values. You can pull money out, use that money to buy another property and do the same thing again. Just like the burst strategy, when we were able to pull out 500,000, use that on your next property, increase the property value on the next property, refinance that, pull the money out and do it again. So you're kind of using that same deposit money each time to buy another property by able to refinance, pull it out, use that money again to buy another property. Any questions so far? Not yet. Okay.
This is good.
This is an example of that forced appreciation. This was actually my property. Before RUBS, we had our total income, total expenses, and then after RUBS, and you can see about $953,000 difference in our property valuation after implementing the program. And so I have a quick example and a tool for all of you guys. So if you guys have your phones out, I'm going to have you do a quick calculation. We're going to look at your portfolio and what potential you can see for increasing your portfolio value. So if you have units or if you're looking at a property with a number of units, you can do this as well, even if you don't have a property yet. Use an example of the size property you're looking to buy. And what I'm going to have you guys do is you're going to first calculate the number of multifamily units that you have. So in my example was 36. So you put 36, and then you're going to multiply that by 1,000. And so that's going to take you, so mine was 36, so that became 36,000. And then once you have that number, I want you to go ahead and divide that number by your average cap rate. And if you're not sure what your cap rate is, I would use a cap rate of about 5.5, which is a pretty common cap rate across the board right now, which typically hovers right around the interest rates. So in my scenario, it would be 36 times 1,000 would be 36,000 divided by 0.055. Does anybody want to share their number?
Okay, I must be doing it wrong. I got 2.75.
How many units do you have?
Hold on. I have 2 units that are 2 family. So do I
Okay.
count that as 4 or 2?
Are they, you said there are 2 units and they're 2 properties that are duplexes,
Yes,
or they're single family?
duplexes, and then there's one that's a single family.
Okay. So I'm going to show you real quick here. I have this little NOI calculator on. Let me see if I can increase this screen a little bit here. I have this NOI calculator on my website. So yours is 4 units, right? And we're going to say a 5.5 cap rate. So it's a $72,000 increase in property value on average. Does anybody else have a number that they would like to look at?
So the only time we do this calculator is when it's a multifamily, not a single family.
Yes, because what you're doing in single family, they're going to go ahead and put the bills in their names anyways, directly, versus being split for RUBS. So you would typically not have to do it in a single family because they're paying all the bills anyways.
Okay.
Can you, Greg asked if you
Does
can
that
go
make sense?
on the formula again?
So we're going to do the formula one more time. Let me go back to my other
So
screen
it would
here.
be 4 times 0.05, you said? 0.55.
Yeah, it's going to be 4 times 1,000. So it'd be
Oh,
4,000 divided
1,000.
by,
Sorry.
yep, no problem. So it'd be 4 times 1,000. So it'd be 4,000 divided by 0.055.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on unless anybody wants to share their number or would like any help with their calculation. All right. So I'm going to go over how to really use this in evaluating new deals. So this is a typical property, you know, when you get a property that you're looking
What
at
happened?
and
Did
you
I
look
just
at
lose
the,
everybody?
oh, we can still see you. Maybe you have to change screens. All right. So when you get your property financials, what you want to do is you want to look at these lines. I can always tell when people are marketing their properties if they're doing RUBS or not. And what I do is I want to look at the lines that show here. This shows water and trash. The next line down here shows the pest control. And then the bottom line here shows sewer. And so they always will show the pro forma number. So at its most optimal performance, you'll see what the property's financials should be performing at. But what's always interesting to me is they don't actually include RUBS in the property performance. So as I look up here, I don't see that they're adding RUBS expenses to any of these. So at this current property here, it's valued at 6.3 million. And then as I really dig in, I'm going to show you where the formula that I gave you is really more of like a back of the envelope quick model to say, okay, how much does this look like it can give me in forced depreciation? There's a little bit more of a complex model that really digs in to show exactly how much you should be able to get. So in this scenario, using this quick model, I would have taken their 20 units, I would have multiplied it by 1,000, giving me 20,000. And this had a cap rate of 2.6. And I don't know who's buying properties at 2.6 cap rate, but this is probably an older slide when people were buying properties at that low of a cap rate. But with that back of the envelope calculation I gave you, it shows me about a $760,000 increase in forced depreciation. But when you really dig into the numbers here, and I've added it here, there's 40,000 in water and trash, and then another probably 5,000 in pest control, and another 15,000 or so in sewer. So I pulled the numbers here, the 40,000 plus the 5,000 plus the 15 actually equals 60,000. So you could see here, this is basically saying you're going to get about 20,000 back. So it's about $1,000 a unit per year. But when you look at the cost of what they're actually paying for the water, sewer, and trash, this property is paying a lot more than that. So I took their 60,000 total and I multiplied that by 90%. So when you're doing these RUBS formulas, you can do about 90% of the bill you can bill back to your tenants. And so this actually gave me a $54,000 recovery rate for my utility reimbursement. I took that 54,000, divided it by the same cap rate they were selling it at, and that actually increased the property by $2 million. And that $2 million totally changes the deal from, you know, maybe I thought this was an okay deal, knowing that there's $2 million in, you know, potential increase or upside or value add. That gives me a completely different way of looking at this. So I always like to say, picture a day when you happily open your big water bill, knowing that your residents are going to pay you back. Or when your accountant says, wow, what are you doing differently this year? Your profits are up. And when your profits catapult you to the next level. And what we also do for our Buy It, Rent It, Profit members is we want to make sure that we not only kind of explain how RUBS works, but really kind of get you off on the right foot. So we offer a lease template package. So if you need lease templates that show, you know, here's a 30-day notice. I have tenants that are currently in leases and I want to get them started. Typically what you would do is you wouldn't just be able to start the program right away, because if people are currently in a lease, you have to wait for their leases to expire. So what we recommend is actually sending a tenant introductory letter. You introduce them to the program, but you introduce it with a very, how do you say it, conservation heavy messaging. You know, we're all doing our part to conserve. You know, help us today by reducing your water use, and, you know, subsequently bills will come out and they'll be less. With a really conservation heavy messaging to kind of get your tenants on board. We normally tell you guys to send an intro letter along with a 30-day notice. Now, some people, let's say their lease doesn't expire till the end of July, and some people are on month to month. The ones who are on month to month, 30 days will pass and then they'll become billable. So you can bill them right away. But when you blanket the whole property, you don't have to go back and figure out, well, who did I give the letter to? Who did I give the 30-day notice to? You just give it to everybody at first. And so some people get a 30-day notice and some people might get 4 months notice. It doesn't really make a difference, but you're kind of letting them know once your lease expires, the resident responsibility for utilities is going to change. So you do the 30 days of the change of terms of your lease agreement. So we actually have a couple different samples of the introductory letter, sample 30-day notice, and then we also have a utility addendum. So even if you're not doing this today, if the number one takeaway you should take from this is immediately add a utility addendum to your leases going forward. Anyone who moves into your property should not move in without a lease addendum attached to their lease, or sorry, a utility addendum attached to their lease. So whether you start it today or whether you start the program in 6 months, the sooner you can make sure that all your tenants have the right language within their lease, you can immediately start charging them for the utilities going forward. So I have a couple packages and with samples that I'll make sure that all of you guys get as well to get you started. And then we also do a property compliance assessment. So there are certain areas in the country that you can't do RUBS in. You know, I would say I use the term like regulation hotspots, because 99% of the country you can do RUBS in all day, but there's a few hotspots like San Jose, California, Santa Monica, California, surprisingly Miami-Dade County in Miami, Florida. We actually don't buy properties in Miami just because we can't do RUBS on the properties. And then North Carolina, you can't do RUBS in North Carolina for some reason. So there are a few hot spots, but we have all the regulations across the country. And so you're welcome to book a property compliance assessment with me. And we'll go through, see where your property is located, make sure that everything is good to go to get you started on a RUBS program for your tenants. And then we also offer free concierge onboarding. So once you get your property signed up, we come in, we get everything set up for you. We train you on how to do it. We train you on how to use the software, and then we stay with you for the next 3 or 4 months. Each month we do the billing with you until you get comfortable using our platform. Typically by the 2nd month or even the 3rd month, people are like, oh, this is so easy. I don't even need you anymore, which is great. I feel like we can kind of kick them out of the nest and they can fly on their own. But, you know, it's typically, you know, the first onboarding is a little bit interesting because you're learning our new software. You're kind of learning where everything is, and I'm showing you how to get how I've set everything up. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, that first one, but by the 2nd one, it feels a lot more familiar. But we want to make sure that all of our clients are very comfortable using the platform, so we stay with them as long as they need us. So we offer all that to all the Buy It, Rent It, Profit students, and we will hopefully get your properties going and you'll feel comfortable using the platform. And so everybody will get a copy of that when we're done.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
both of my properties in New England, I believe they share 1 meter. So how do I go about splitting the water bill? I
Yeah,
believe
no,
they're on the
it's
same
that's a
meter.
great question. No, it's, you know, the difference between like sub-metering your apartments and doing a RUBS formula is RUBS is really a mathematical formula. So you can't necessarily divide the bill evenly because you might have grandma in one unit and like family of 5 in the next unit. And so we know that they're not using the water, you know, equally. So dividing the bill equally isn't really a solution to the problem. It kind of does gets you some recovery, but it doesn't really bill it more fairly. But when you don't have the ability to put a sub-meter on your unit, and I always like to say the dirty secret of sub-meters is it costs $500 to $800 a unit to put the sub-meter system on there. You have to put the meter, you know, equipment on the meter, and all that equipment over time. There's always failure rates and misreads, and it just makes it a lot more complicated. Doing a RUB scenario, there's no money out of pocket. You don't need to worry about different sub-meters, but it divides up the bill based on a couple of factors. So yes, it's not perfect. It's not telling you the exact usage per unit, but it is saying, okay, how many occupants do you have in your unit? And it's going to say, okay, you know, grandma has 1 occupant, the family of 5 next door. She's going to get a proportionate share of the bill based on her occupancy. So 1 versus 5. And then we use something called ratio occupancy or factored occupancy, which is saying that just because one person is in a unit, if you have 2 people, it doesn't mean you're actually using double the amount of water. There's some economies of scale built in. So for 2 tenants, the second tenant actually gets 0.6 of a person, and the third tenant gets 0.6 of a person. And so by the fourth tenant, it actually drops down to 0.4 of a person. So you definitely have some economies of scale. So everybody has this kind of factored occupancy count. So that makes up one portion of the bill. Another portion of the bill is made up on square footage. So you might have, a lot of people might have like a house in front with an ADU in the back. And so they want to be able to split up the cost, but they don't know how to do it fairly because maybe the house is 2,500 square feet and the ADU is 500 square feet. So using the square footage part of the bill, so square footage and occupancy are typically the 2 determiners on how you're going to bill this. So it's going to take, you know, 2,500 square feet divided by the 3,000 square feet. That's the combination of both units. And then the 500 square foot unit is going to do 500 square feet divided by the 3,000. So each one has the proportionate share of the bill, but you don't actually have to know exactly what it is. So in your case with the duplex, you would come into the property setup and you would just put in your bill each month and it would divide it out. And I can actually do a quick example of how that looks, and I'll do it right within our software and show you guys. All right. Let me enlarge my screen a little bit more. All right. Okay, so this is our Utility Ranger platform. So let me go down to an example. I have this Ann Street Apartments here where we have this apartment building set up with 2 units here. We're billing water and sewer only. And then we have all of the different resident fees like internet, parking, storage, cable. And so when I go to bill the property, I just come in here, I say bill by property, and I'm just going to come in here and actually enter the bills. I'm going to enter my water bill, and I have an estimate button if for some reason you don't get your water bill on time, but I don't have a bill in front of me to know exactly what the amount is. So we're just going to use this amount for now. And then my sewer bill as well. So all you have to do each time is just enter the bill amount. So you would enter your water bill, sewer bill, trash bill if you needed to do that as well. And then once you hit save, you hit calculate the bills, and it shows you exactly how it's divided up. So on this one, I actually don't have a tenant in this other unit. But even if I don't have a tenant, it's still showing me the occupancy not the occupancy, but the square footage portion of that bill. So it's still allocating some use to the vacant unit in case I need to turn the unit over and I'm still using water to clean the unit and get it ready for the next tenant. But it divides it up between those two units. And once you're satisfied with those, you can actually just send the bills from here. But let's say for some reason I noticed my water bill, I see a little red flag here showing my water bill went up by 20%. Maybe I had a water leak on site or something happened that my bill has gone up 20%. Now I can decide as an owner, do I want to actually increase the amount of the bill that I pay for? So I maybe have like some landscaping on site or some other common water use, maybe a washer, a common area washer dryer. But let's say there was a slab leak or something exterior on the building and I don't want my tenants penalized by having their water bill go up by 20%. So I can actually come in here and increase the amount that I pay for this water bill by however much I want to increase it. And you can see the bills amounts in these blue columns that are calculated. That actually changes dynamically once you change your owner's portion of the bill. And then once I'm happy with the amount, I can click on what the invoice looks like. Let me increase my screen here a little bit so you can see it. It will break down all the utility charges on top here. So I can have my water sewer broken down, 130, and then I have $50 parking and a $50 pet fee that gets added in. So their total comes to $230.64. My admin fee here is $6 to my tenants and my rent, so bringing that total to $2,200. Now, it's important to kind of talk about the admin fees. I don't think I talked about that yet. So admin fees are typically what you would pay if you were to have a utility billing service company do this for you. And they would typically charge around $6 or $7 per unit that your tenant pays for. In Utility Ranger, though, we actually charge $3 per unit per month, but that $3 can be passed through as an admin fee. So in that case, my admin fee should be $3. But because the industry typically charges more than $3 for doing utility billing, we actually allow our clients to increase their admin fee up to $10. You can actually add an extra $3 on top of the fee for our service. So not only does our service become free because it's a pass-through, but then you can actually make additional revenue by adding a few dollars to your admin fee and passing the admin fee to your residents around $6, $7, whatever makes sense for your property. And so then you can actually generate additional revenue on top of your utilities because you're essentially becoming your own utility billing provider. So you can actually get that that fee and take that as additional income for your property. A couple other things we like to show on the invoices as well is it shows the monthly breakdown of the property utility bills. It shows what the property share of that is, and then what's the resident share. So this is because there's an empty unit, they're 100% of the occupancy, but the unit size, they're only 55% of the total property. So that's how they can typically reverse engineer actually their exact amounts by taking the property bills, deducting the property share, and then multiplying these occupants and unit size back into that amount to reverse engineer these charges here. So once they're satisfied with their billing, all they come in here, do create and send bills, and the bills are emailed off to your tenants. Simple as that. So it's really just entering your property bills each month, clicking calculate, and sending them off to the tenants. While I'm here, though, I want to show you guys a couple other things. I have a few sample letters that this is what I'm going to be sending over to you guys as well. Here's a sample letter introducing your tenants to the RUBS program. There's a couple yellow spots in here that can be updated that's specific to your property because every property is so different. But this is the sample RUBS introductory letter. And then here is the 30-day notice sample that we give out as well. So you'll put to your tenants and say, okay, the other changes is utility responsibility. And then it says, here's, you're going to do a formula based on one of these formulas. Key one here is a combination of one or more of the above, which gives you flexibility to change the billing methodology as you need to for your property. So sometimes you might need a bill with occupancy and square foot. Sometimes you might want to just use square foot or just occupancy. There's a variety of reasons for all of those. And we go over that in the training and make sure that we pick the right billing methodology for your property. And then we also have the addendum. This is a standard kind of utility addendum that you can add into all of your leases going forward. So it goes line by utility. So water, sewer, trash, gas. Who's the customer of record would be the landlord. Are you charging it to the resident? Yes. And how are you calculating that? So you might put 50 square feet in occupancy. I always use the combination of one or more of the above. And then are the common areas separately metered or they're not separately metered? And it's going to be deducted before billing the residents. So this is a great one to use. You might see on here as well, hot water energy. This is one that's becoming more and more popular to bill, which is basically your boiler. It's the gas that services your central boiler. If you have a central boiler on your property that heats up the hot water. So it's often referred to as hot water energy. So your tenants know that that's where the gas cost is coming from. And then there's some additional information on this as well. And I'll make sure that all of you guys get a copy. So let me stop there for a minute and see, do you guys have any other questions? Or do you want to talk any specifics about your property that we might be able to dig into?
No.
I was going to ask a question. So we're sitting across the table, so we're trying to keep our mute on, so microphone. Yes. So no, I mean we love the product and we use it every Thursday night to show again forced appreciation. So this just always helps us go through.
It's a game changer.
It is. It really is.
We actually just did this. We just bought a 30-unit building in Pompano Beach. And we bought it for, I think, 5.1, instantly implemented Utility Ranger. And now it took us about 10 months to get the program completely set up on the property because we had a bunch of leases we had to wait for those leases to expire. So we were kind of following that through. But what's great about how the software works is we can actually put in the whole property and we have something called a billing start date. So you might have a move-in date of something in 2013, but we know their lease expires July 31st. So the billing start date we'd add on the tenant profile as August 1st. So as soon as you come into August 1st is within your billing window, it automatically triggers that tenant to get billed. So even if their start date is October 15th, it will prorate just those 15 days of the bill. So everything is automatic and gets prorated. It makes it really simple and easy to use. You don't have to worry about these, one-off scenarios, but sometimes it can take a little bit of time. So we actually just got that property refinanced, pulled about an extra $1 million out of that property. It just got appraised. I think it was appraised for 6.7, and we've owned it about a year and a half. And it's been great. So we just pulled out some money from that. We used that property. We bought another 30 units in Coral Springs, Florida. So it's really been our secret sauce, looking at properties that aren't billing for utilities, because we know that, everybody wants to talk about value add. Like I'm going to add, new counters and new kitchens and new bathrooms and all the fixtures, but you're going to end up spending $20,000 a unit to upgrade it. And I don't really have that kind of money when I'm buying a property. I'm just trying to stabilize the property. So I don't want to dump a bunch of money into the property when I don't have to. I might redo the units as units turn over one by one as they come up. But by then I'm already getting money from my RUBS reimbursement. So I have that additional income to put into the property to rehab any of the units if I need to, but I don't necessarily have to. So I focus on stabilizing the property, getting everyone set up on a RUBS program and really ramping up the income before I focus on any kind of rehab.
So how long do you have to wait before you refinance? Is
There's
there a
really
period that you have to wait?
There's not really a specific period that you have to wait. I would say it really depends on what your needs are and what your current loan looks like. So if your loan we purposely don't get loans that have prepay prepays on them, because if you have a loan that has a prepay on it, you might have to wait a certain amount of time, or you have to pay a big lump sum to get out of the loan. Knowing that this is kind of our formula, we always make sure that our loans don't have any prepayment penalties attached to them. So we typically refinance it about a year and a half to 2 years after we buy a property. Interest rates are kind of always fluctuating. So I feel like we're always refinancing one of our properties all the time and kind of trying to drive the value up, pull out any money that we can to continue to grow our portfolio. So the answer is a little bit, it depends, but I would say to make it more flexible for you, try to, look at it again in 2 years. 1 to 2 years is not unheard of. Some people might do it every 3 years. It depends, how much has your value been able to be increased? What does the market look like, and what do interest rates look like? If the interest rates have gone up, I'm definitely not refinancing. If the interest rates have gone down maybe a half a point or more, I'm going to look at refinancing sooner, or if I'm fearful that the interest rates are going to go back up. And then we typically buy properties with interest only upfront on the loan. So we try to get as long of an interest only period as we can, because we're really focused on cash flow. So if we can get like a 2 or 3 year interest only payment, then right around that time the interest only payment is starting to expire is really the trigger for us to refinance and pull cash out. So right when we jump in, we're pushing to either increase rents or implement the RUBS program and get as much additional income. So when that interest only period starts to near expiration, we know that we're going to refinance it, pull money out, use that money to buy another property and do it again.
So, quick question. So, in my situation, do you think it's best to sell those properties and try to relocate and try to get into a multi unit here in Florida? Because I have long term tenants. And I feel like if we do any change in having them pay utilities or having anything at all, they're just going to freak out. I'm just going to lose them. I just feel like,
I
I don't
think
know.
that's
They
really common. Everybody feels that way
Yeah, only
initially.
because like I said when I met you guys, that I didn't raise the rent since they've been there.
Wow.
So I
And
don't
but
I don't
think about
know.
it, like think of what a burden it is for your tenant to like move, right? Let's say their property there is under rented, right? So they already know that they're under rented, and they're probably expecting a lease bump increase at some point. So then you implement a RUBS program. It's actually the perfect time to implement a RUBS program, because you're going to implement it and they'll be happy to pay the water bill as long as you don't increase their rent. So, tenants are not going to move for a $50 water bill, because often they're going to move to another apartment building that they're already going to be charged water for anyways. So it's not like they're going to get away from it, because more and more people are starting to do this. So even though they're not paying it now, if they're under rented, it's actually the perfect time to implement it, because they're not going to necessarily move. Everyone's fearful that they're going to move, but it costs them so much more to actually move when you're trying to avoid maybe paying a $50 or $60 water bill. So net, it's not actually going to trigger them to move. It's going to just, be happy they're probably not getting a rent increase, but it's definitely going to reduce your expenses quite a bit.
And
And as far
always,
as, move your property, there's a lot of dependencies on that. I would say Florida is a much more landlord friendly state. It's growing, the market's growing. There's definitely a demand for housing. We've moved ours out of California because it's not very landlord friendly, should we say, in California. And so moving our properties to Florida, we've seen a huge boost. We're trying to pick up on the momentum of all these people moving to Florida and provide housing for them, because it's a lot more demand here than it was back in California. So it really just depends on the market that you're in the other states. And I also like to be near my properties. I was just in Miami earlier today, and on my way home, we're driving properties. We just want to not even that we're managing them anymore. Now we have third-party management, but we still drive by to make sure there's nothing happening random there on Tuesday night. So I like to be within driving distance, but everybody kind of has their own model of what works for them. I
Yes,
heard another question.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
what's the
just,
question? I want to hear everybody else's.
I was just gonna mention
one of the asset manager techniques when you're always concerned about current resident base. When you own and operate rental property, you're always concerned about current rental base. So, that's never going to change, Ms. Nuez, as far as that, as you scale, even if you stay where you're at, you're always concerned about tenant base. So you should always be marketing your units. So you understand if you lose one tenant, you're able to, exactly where the market is. Typically with smaller landlords, it's like, oh, I'm scared to lose a tenant, and they feel like they're starting back over from square one. In management, you're never starting over from square one. Every week, you should be doing a market survey and understanding where your rental market is. So you should always be marketing and having a Facebook page that's even with your properties, marketing and promoting your properties. And you can simply say, hey, listen, right now they're occupied, but you can still be pushing them and marketing them, and then always pushing the rents. Typically what we do is we have the rents at market rent. So if something should happen, a tenant loses their job, a tenant dies, I mean, something's always happening. They move in with their boyfriend or girlfriend. We're always marketing, and our leasing agents know, okay, well, listen, we've got a waiting list. We've got 4 people that showed interest in this particular unit. So get out there and cold call. You call them and say, hey, look, Ms. Nuez, are you still interested in that 2-bedroom, 2-bath at 7505 Park? Yeah, I'm actually still in the market. Great. This unit just came available. So you're always marketing. That's a part of management and operating, because you never want to feel like when you own and operate property that you're held captive by your current tenant base.
100%. And by marketing it at market rate rent, as Brian mentioned, it also shows your tenants like, hey, you're getting 1,600 for rent, and I can market this for 2,000. So you're getting a deal no matter what. It makes them feel like, oh, I am really getting a deal. I see her marketing this for $2,000.
Absolutely.
And I have a waiting list of 4 people. Hey, you don't want to pay your water bill? That's fine. I have a waiting list of 4 people who are dying to get in the building,
Yeah.
paying $2,000.
When can
It
I get
really
that?
kind of demands.
When can I get that notice? So that, when you tell them, when can I expect a written notice? When you start talking like that, they're, trust me, it's a different ball game. But that, again, this is the side of management, being proactive and not reactive, and do it, Ms. Nunez. This is what I'm talking about, where we have to sit and take a look at your portfolio. So when you ask questions, what do you think I should do? Anyone that gives you an answer on what they think, and I think I told you this the last time we met, anyone that gives you an answer on what you should do in 30 minutes of knowing you, without sitting down and looking at your portfolio, sitting down and looking at your current rent schedules, sitting down and looking at where we currently are in the marketplace, and then giving you an analysis based on that, where rates are, what's the cost of moving, what is the cost of getting these properties sold, what's the anticipation of how long it's going to take to get it sold, a framework. Without giving you that, and then just giving you a knee-jerk answer, that's not doing you any justice, nor is it doing, you shouldn't really value that answer in the first place. It has to be thought out, and you have to approach it like a business.
Exactly.
I have a question. If I have
Yeah.
a condo and the HOA covers a lot of the fees, like water, cable, am I able to implement the RUBS system with that?
So is your question, are you renting out your singular condo, or are you talking about for your HOA for them to take it out of the HOA dues?
So I'm renting out a single condo, and
Okay.
the HOA dues that I cover a lot of the cable, internet, and then like service, like lawn maintenance.
Yeah.
Would that be able?
You can actually do that 100%. So what you do is you market your unit. How much do you rent your unit for?
Right now in Section 8, it's at 1966.
Okay. And what's your HOA dues?
This is what's going to shock you. It's basically 718. Yeah, that's why I asked.
Woo, yeah. Where's your property located?
It's located in Clearwater, Florida.
Okay. Wow, those are high HOA dues.
It's only getting
You said
higher.
that covers what? Your insurance, your water, sewer,
And
gardening.
cable, internet.
Okay, so I would market your apartment whatever you're marketing at, 1900 or whatever. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I would market that and just say, I have an amenities package that comes along with it. So in the amenities package, that can include your water, sewer, that can include your gardening, that can include your cable and Wi-Fi. Just because you're being billed for it in a lump sum, you can, I'm going to charge you $50 a month for cable. I'm going to charge you $40 or $50 a month for your Wi-Fi. Your water and your sewer is going to get charged however much per month. So you can actually break this down into an itemized bill, and having their total rent actually get much closer to 2,000, 2,100, because how much would it cost for them to go out and get cable and internet themselves? If it would cost them $70 a month for internet, maybe 70 to 80 bucks a month for TV, if you can give that to them for $50 or $60 a month, they're actually saving money by going through you. So you're still charging them for that because they're getting that as an added benefit. Bulking it in with your rent doesn't necessarily benefit you because you think you're at market rate, right? But again, if you look at the other properties, in and around your area, and people charging, what are they charging for rent? To cover all those additional costs, your rent would probably have to be, almost $200 more at least to just cover all the costs that they would have to go out and buy separately. So I would think of it as, here's your rent and here's all the things that you would have to do if you were going to rent a house or rent anything on your own. You'd have to have water, sewer, probably there's pest control in there. There's, cable, Wi-Fi, and charge all of that separately, and that will help increase your rents. And then the tenants really see that this is an added benefit because I'm getting a discount by going through you versus having to go out and get this on my own.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
No, as always,
Well,
awesome.
I hope you guys found this valuable. I mean, I truly believe in this. I think it's one of the fastest ways to not only drive your revenue up, but really grow your portfolio, because a lot of people aren't really using this technique now. So I feel like it gives us a little bit of an advantage across, sometimes you look at, and I know in the deal analyzer on the website, you look at those, you say, okay, well, what does my cap rate look like? What are all the deals that they're giving me, all the deal information? What does that mainly look like? But if you can, jack up your NOI by another 40, 50, 7,000, if you can increase that, then hey, they're not even marketing that this is what the property valuation is. I know how much value I can add. And that really gives you a leg up above the competition because you can be more aggressive with your pricing, knowing, hey, I have $1 million of value add on the backside of this.
Awesome. Yep. Awesome.
Absolutely. This is awesome.
So now with that, when I'll give everyone the documents that I mentioned earlier, samples of all the leases, agreements, the addendums, and I'll also send you guys a link directly to our NOI calculator site. That way, if you guys want to get in there, figure out what a deal looks like. I also think the NOI calculator is accessible from the Buy Rent a Profit website as well.
It's on the dashboard. It's on the same.
Yep.
Yeah, it's on the same dashboard as the deal analyzer. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really helps you kind of jack those deal numbers up and makes it look much better for you. And also when you're giving this and kind of presenting to the bank, how are you going to finance this deal? What's your property plan? And you tell them you're going to implement a RUBS program. The banks love this because they know it's free money. You guys are getting your NOI up. It shows the bank is like, oh, this person really knows what they're doing. They have a plan of how they're going to increase the property's value. And so it makes them feel much more secure in lending to you as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen and Greg as well.
Good night, Tiffany.